I did not die in a hospital bed or under flashing lights. I died quietly inside a moment of pride, bitterness, and exhaustion I refused to confess. One second I was standing in a dream that felt heavier than sleep, and the next I was somewhere else entirely. The air burned without heat, and the sky had no stars. Ahead of me stretched a bridge made of blackened stone, cracked and breathing smoke, suspended over an endless abyss that roared like a living thing. Every step toward that bridge felt familiar, as if I had walked it many times before. In small choices lies I excused, mercy I withheld, prayers I postponed. Figures stood along the sides, shadows shaped like people but hollowed by regret. They did not scream. Their silence was worse. Each one stared forward, fixed on the other side, where a red glow pulsed like a wounded heart. I knew, without being told, that the bridge was not punishment forced on me. It was permission granted by my own will. With every selfish act, I had built it. With every warning ignored, I had strengthened it. And now it waited, patient and final. As I stepped onto the bridge, it groaned beneath my weight. Memories flooded my mind, not the big sins I defended, but the quiet moments where love asked for obedience, and I said later. Faces appeared, people I could have helped, words I should not have spoken, truth I buried for comfort. The abyss below seemed to echo each memory, feeding on them. Halfway across, the air grew thick. My legs trembled. That was when I heard it, not thunder, not fire, but a voice steady and sorrowful, calling my name the way a parent calls a child who has wandered too far. It did not accuse. It did not shout. It simply said, "Turn back." I wanted to answer, but shame sealed my mouth. I told myself it was too late. The bridge had already accepted me. The other side was inevitable. I took another step, and the stone cracked, sending sparks into the darkness below. Then, suddenly everything stopped. A hand brighter than the sky had ever been gripped my shoulder. The weight of my guilt lifted in an instant, replaced by a pain deeper and sharper. The pain of being loved when I deserved abandonment. The voice spoke again, closer now. "You were not created for this." I fell to my knees as the bridge began to crumble behind me. The abyss roared louder, furious at what it was losing. But the hand did not let go. Light flooded the darkness, not blinding, but healing. In that light, I understood what mercy truly meant, not the absence of justice, but love stepping in before the final step is taken. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding, tears soaking my pillow. The room was quiet, ordinary, safe, but I was not the same. The bridge was gone, yet its warning remained. I knew I had been pulled back at the last moment, not because I was worthy, but because grace had outrun my rebellion. Since that night, I walk more carefully, not in fear, but in gratitude. Because I have seen where my choices can lead, and I have felt the hand of God strong enough to pull me back when I could not save myself. I thought waking up meant it was over, that the bridge would fade like any other nightmare. But the truth is, some experiences do not end when your eyes open. They follow you. They sit beside you in silence and wait for you to decide whether you will listen. From that morning on, the world felt thinner, as if the veil between the seen and unseen had been pulled back just enough for me to notice what I had ignored before. Ordinary moments began to carry weight. A careless word felt heavier on my tongue. A lie, even a small one, echoed louder in my chest. I realized that the bridge I saw was not built in a single night. It was constructed daily, slowly, through habits I had normalized and convictions I had compromised. Hell was not just a destination. It was a direction. At night, fragments of the vision returned. Not the fire, not the abyss, but the faces. Faces of people I had hurt without apology. faces of those who needed truth when I offered silence. Their eyes were not angry. They were disappointed, and that pierced deeper than fear ever could. I understood then that love neglected becomes a form of cruelty. I tried to pray, but words failed me. All I could offer was honesty. I confessed the parts of myself I had carefully hidden behind religion, routine, and pride. And in that rawness, something changed. God did not speak in visions this time. He spoke through conviction, gentle, persistent, impossible to ignore. Walk away from what leads you back to that bridge. Obedience was harder than belief. Letting go of certain relationships, habits, and comforts felt like tearing pieces of myself away. Yet with every step in the opposite direction, the heaviness lifted. Peace did not arrive all at once, but it came steadily, like dawn replacing a long night. I began to see mercy everywhere, in second chances, in delayed consequences, in the quiet patience of God. I realized that being pulled back was not just a rescue. It was an assignment, a warning meant to be shared. Because many are walking toward the same bridge, convinced it does not exist, unaware that every step matters. I know now that the last moment is not guaranteed for everyone. Grace reached me in time, but time itself is fragile. And so I live differently, not perfect, but awake. Because once you have stood on the bridge to hell and felt God pull you back, you never forget how close eternity truly is. Time passed, but the memory never dulled. Instead, it sharpened. I began to understand that being pulled back from the edge did not erase the consequences of how close I had come. It changed my responsibility. I was no longer living in ignorance. I was living with revelation. And revelation demands a response. I noticed how easily people joked about sin, how casually they dismissed eternity as a myth meant to control fear. I used to be one of them. Now every laugh felt hollow, every excuse familiar. I saw myself in their confidence, and it terrified me. The bridge had not looked frightening at first either. It had looked solid, reasonable, earned. There were days I struggled. Old desires returned, whispering that one step would not matter, that I was strong enough now, that grace meant freedom without restraint. But then the image would rise again, the cracking stone beneath my feet, the abyss breathing beneath the surface, patient and hungry. I learned that temptation is rarely loud. It is persuasive, calm, and convincing. In quiet moments, I sensed God urging me to speak not loudly, not forcefully, but truthfully, to live in a way that made people ask questions, to choose forgiveness when pride demanded distance, to choose obedience when comfort begged for compromise. Each choice felt small, yet I knew they were building something to another bridge, leading away from destruction. I began to see spiritual warfare not as dramatic battles, but as daily decisions. What I watched, what I tolerated, what I justified. Hell did not need to drag me. It only needed me to keep walking. Heaven, I realized, required humility, the courage to turn around even when the path forward seemed easier. Sometimes fear crept in, not of punishment, but of failing again. In those moments, I remembered the hand that stopped me. The grip was firm, unwavering. God had not pulled me back to abandon me halfway. He pulled me back to teach me how to walk. I still carry the memory of the edge, but it no longer controls me. It guides me. It reminds me that life is not neutral ground. It is a narrow path shaped by choices, guided by grace, and measured by eternity. And every day I wake up knowing this truth. I am not here by accident. I am here because mercy intervened, and my life must now testify that the bridge is real, but so is the hand that saves. With time, the fear that once followed me transformed into clarity. I finally understood that being pulled back was not just about my escape, it was about purpose. God does not rescue without reason. He restores so that truth can be revealed, not hidden. And slowly, I began to see why I was allowed to stand on that bridge and still return. People started crossing my path at precise moments. Conversations drifted naturally toward pain, guilt, and unanswered questions about God. I listened more than I spoke. When I did speak, I did not exaggerate or dramatize. I simply told the truth. Some leaned in with hunger, others recoiled in discomfort. I learned that truth comforts the repentant but unsettles the resistant. I realized that hell is rarely denied outright. It is postponed. People tell themselves there is time to change, time to make things right, time to turn back. I once believed that too, but the bridge taught me that delay is its own decision. Every ignored warning is a step forward, whether we admit it or not. There were nights I wept in prayer, not for myself, but for those who mocked what I had seen. I felt the weight of their footsteps, steady and confident, moving toward something they could not imagine. God reminded me that my role was not to force their return, but to point to the exit while it was still visible. I also learned mercy toward myself. Shame tried to convince me that I was unworthy to speak, that my past disqualified me. But grace said otherwise. The same hand that pulled me back also lifted my head. Redemption is not pretending the bridge never existed. It is choosing a new direction and helping others recognize the danger ahead. Now I live with urgency, but not panic. With compassion, but not compromise. Every sunrise feels like borrowed time, every breath an opportunity. I know what waits at the end of careless living, and I know the power that can interrupt even the final step. I was sent back with a message, not of terror alone, but of hope. The bridge to hell is real, built quietly by choices we defend. Life after the bridge was not simple. The shadows I had ignored did not vanish. They lingered, reminders of what I had almost lost. But now, each shadow was a teacher, each memory a compass. I learned to recognize the subtle ways temptation crept in. A harsh word, a selfish thought, a postponed responsibility. They were small, almost harmless in appearance, yet powerful enough to rebuild the bridge I had narrowly escaped. I began to live deliberately. Each morning, I prayed not just for protection, but for awareness, to see the choices I might have overlooked before, to notice the moments where grace quietly demanded action. I no longer walked blindly through life, assuming mercy would always intervene. The mercy I had received was rare, precious, and required response. People began to notice the change. Friends and strangers alike sensed something different in me, not pride, but quiet conviction. I could speak about the darkness I had seen without fear, not to scare them, but to awaken them. Some listened and nodded, hearts opening. Others resisted, uncomfortable with a reality they had ignored. And I understood that I could not force anyone to turn back. Their bridge was theirs to face, but mine was to warn. I discovered that sharing the story of the bridge was itself a bridge, a connection between those lost in distraction and the possibility of salvation. Every testimony, every conversation, every act of kindness became a step on a path leading away from destruction. Now, even in moments of peace, I feel the weight of the bridge behind me. Not as fear, but as remembrance. Each choice I make, each life I touch, is measured against the memory of what awaited me. The bridge is still real, and its shadows still whisper, but I walk in the light. And with every step, I am reminded that mercy met me where I could not meet myself, and that hand is always reaching, even when the abyss seems nearest. I live now not for comfort, but for vigilance, not for applause, but for obedience. Because once you have felt the pull of eternity and the grasp of grace, life is never the same, and every day becomes a chance to choose the light. With each passing day, I realized that being pulled back from the bridge was not only a personal rescue, It was a call to mission. The experience had engraved a truth on my soul. Life is fleeting, choices matter, and grace is both powerful and patient. But those who never experience such mercy may walk unknowingly toward the same edge. My survival was meant to be a warning, and my voice a bridge for others. I began seeking out moments where my testimony could touch someone else's life. In quiet conversations, I shared glimpses of what I'd seen: the abyss, the bridge, the hand that pulled me back. I spoke of regret, of mercy, and of the narrow path between the two. Some listened with disbelief, some with curiosity, and some with trembling acknowledgement. And I realized that even the smallest seed planted in a heart could prevent someone from stepping onto their own bridge. But the mission was not without struggle. The memories of that bridge often returned unexpectedly, like embers glowing in the dark, reminding me how fragile life is. Temptations, pride, and old habits tried to lure me back, whispering that one step wouldn't matter. Every time I remembered the abyss, the cracked stone, the hollow eyes, and the hand of mercy. That memory became my guide, my shield, my compass. I also learned humility. The hand that saved me did not demand my perfection, only my willingness. Sharing the story meant being honest about my flaws, my failures, and my moments of weakness. Vulnerability became my strength, and authenticity became my message. Now life feels purposeful in ways I cannot fully describe. Every act of kindness, every word of truth, every prayer offered for another soul becomes part of a greater tapestry. The bridge still exists, not as a threat to instill fear, but as a reminder of choice. And I walk every day with awareness, teaching that the hand of God is always ready to pull back those who stray too close to the edge, but only if they are willing to reach for it. My mission continues, and it will until my own life reaches its final step. But until then, I speak, I warn, I encourage, and I live with a single unwavering conviction. Mercy is real, and it is stronger than the darkness that waits. As I continued sharing my story, I began to see the bridge in others, not physically, of course, but in the choices, regrets, and silent battles that people carried with them. Some I met were unaware of how close they were to losing themselves to anger, pride, or apathy. Others had glimpsed their own abyss but refused to turn back. The same way I had walked toward the edge, they had built their own bridges with every decision left unchecked. I realized that the warning I had received was not unique. It was universal. The hand that pulled me back reaches for all, yet many will not see it until it is almost too late. And so my life became intertwined with others' journeys. A conversation in a cafe, a shared word on social media, a phone call in the night. All became lifelines. Sometimes a simple story of survival was enough to make someone pause, to reconsider the path they had been walking blindly. Yet I also saw resistance. Some mocked the idea of judgment, dismissed the concept of hell, or doubted the power of mercy. That was the most challenging part, realizing that not everyone wants to be saved, even when salvation stands before them. But I learned to let go of frustration. My task was not to force belief, only to illuminate the bridge before it could claim them. At times, I still dreamed of the abyss, the red glow, the hollow figures, the cracking stone beneath my feet. But these dreams no longer paralyzed me. They reminded me of urgency, of purpose, and of the delicate thread between life and the consequences of choices. The bridge was real, and I could feel it beneath the world of ordinary life, stretching silently across every decision. Through it all, I discovered that my testimony was not only a warning, it was a map of the dangers that come from ignoring the call of conscience, from neglecting love, from postponing truth. And the most powerful revelation of all, the same hand that pulled me back is always waiting for anyone willing to reach, ready to guide them away from the edge. I live now with eyes open, not in fear, but in clarity. I see the bridges in others' lives, and I speak because mercy is meant to be shared. And in every moment, I pray that they too will feel the pull before the final step is taken. With each day that passed, I came to understand the full weight of human choice. The bridge I had walked was not just a metaphor. It was a manifestation of consequences, visible to the soul even if invisible to the world. Every decision I made, no matter how small, carried the potential to build or dismantle that path toward destruction. And the same was true for everyone around me. I began to notice the subtle ways people drift toward their own bridges. Words left unsaid, kindness withheld, pride that masks fear, distractions that steal attention from what truly matters. These were the stones that paved their way. And I realized that most people do not recognize the path until it is almost too late. That was the urgency I carried in my heart, to speak, to warn, and to illuminate the danger before it claims another soul. Yet, even as I guided others, I wrestled with my own fragility. Temptation never fully disappeared. Old habits whispered in quiet moments. But each time I felt that pull, the memory of the abyss, the hollow figures, and the hand of mercy reminded me of what I could not afford to forget. The bridge had been real, and it had almost claimed me. I could never ignore its existence again. I learned that living rightly is not about perfection. It is about vigilance, humility, and responsiveness to grace. The hand that saved me does not demand flawless obedience, only a willingness to turn when called. And so I continue to live deliberately, making choices that strengthen life rather than reinforce the bridge, sharing my story wherever it might be heard, and praying that others will recognize their own peril before it is too late. Life is no longer ordinary. It is sacred, fragile, and filled with responsibility. And with every heartbeat, I am reminded, the bridge exists, the abyss waits, but mercy is stronger, and it is never too late to turn back. The more I shared my story, the more I realized that the bridge exists not only in my life, but in countless lives around me. People are walking toward it silently, unaware, distracted by comfort, pride, or denial. Some brush off warnings, thinking they are immune. Others are trapped in cycles of hurt and bad choices, convinced there is no way back. And yet, I have seen the proof that mercy reaches even the farthest wanderer. One evening, I found myself speaking to a small group of people in a quiet room. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what I had to convey. I described the bridge, the abyss, the hollow faces, and the hand that pulled me back. I watched their eyes, some widened in disbelief, some filled with fear, others softened with understanding. In that moment, I knew that telling the story was not just about recounting events. It was about awakening something dormant in their souls. I spoke of the urgency of choice, of the subtle steps that lead toward destruction, and of the power of turning back before the final step. I reminded them that the same hand that reached for me reaches for them too, but only if they are willing to grasp it. Silence followed my words, heavy and expectant, like the pause between life and eternity itself.